Welcome to Punching Above Your Weight. This is a podcast that tells the story of people overcoming adversity to reach their goal. We're all told that losing weight is impossible. Well, join me as I learn from the people who have proved that theory wrong. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so welcome back to Punching Above Your Weight. We're up to episode 17 now we are, and today I've got a gentleman by the name of Jim Hitt, who's coming to us from North Dakota in America, America's coldest state, he's just told me. How are you, Jim?
I'm pretty good, man. How are you? How's everything going with you?
Yeah, good. I'm in Australia's coldest state at the moment, and coming from probably Australia's hottest state, so I'm adjusting. So it's it's good, mate. And thanks for coming on to talk about your journey, because it's sounds like one hell of a journey, mate. If you could give us some background about where your weight problems, really started to evolve, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I'll just literally start from the beginning. When I was 3 years old, the only thing I wanted to be was a G.I. Joe. Y'all remember G.I. Joe? I know you do.
I do, yeah.
Yes, of course, Saturday morning cartoons, boy. I wanted to be a G.I. Joe. And of course, as I got older, that evolved into wanting to go into the military. And in high school, in the United States, we have a not a junior military program, but I mean it's a junior cadet program called ROTC. I was in Naval ROTC, and everything I did was getting ready for the military. Most kids wanted to be a rock star this week, an astronaut next week, and of course I wanted to be those things, but the military stuck. And so when I was 17, it was 2001, I was a junior in high school. We were attacked by terrorists on September 11th, 2001.
Everyone remembers where they were that day, don't they?
Everybody remembers. I was in weight class.
Yeah.
I was in weightlifting class. And that was my opportunity. So the plan was to go into the military. I wanted to go into the Army. And I wanted to go into the infantry in the Army. And the idea was, after my junior year, during the summer, go to basic, come back, finish my senior year, then go active duty. And like I said, I had planned for 17 years for one thing. And I was told I could not go into any branch because I had been diagnosed with an eye problem called optic nerve hypoplasia. Devastating does not begin to describe the feeling I had. At 17 years old, I should have had a career picked out, which I did, or I should have been applying to different colleges or universities. I should have had a plan, and I did, but my plan was ripped from underneath me, and I had no direction.
So you only found out about that at the medical gym.
I knew that I had that problem because as a child I hadn't been diagnosed with that problem, but did not know that that was going to keep me out of the military.
Gotcha.
So yeah. I had 20/20 vision. Well, I had 20/15 vision, better than perfect. But on paper, I should have been blind.
Yeah, right.
And so military can't bring somebody in that's blind on paper. That can't happen.
Yeah.
But years later, I learned that I had been misdiagnosed with that. And that was devastating within itself.
So how many years later did you find out?
Year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago.
Wow. Okay, so from the age of 17 to what are you now? Like late 30s, sure. Early 40s or something?
Yeah, I'm 37.
Gotcha.
And so,
wow.
But the depression I fell into was so deep, and the only thing that brought me comfort was food. And I'm originally from Florida. I'm a Southern boy, and so everything family related or church related or gathering in the South revolves around the table a lot.
Yeah.
And so I was already really good at eating, number one. But number two, it brought me comfort. So during that moment, eating that food, I was in total control of eating it, but I had no control to stop.
So you're young,
So it was
fit, and
nothing. I
healthy
would go to
until.
feel.
Sorry, mate. You're
Oh
young.
yeah,
You're
I
young,
played
fit, and healthy
football,
until that.
wrestled.
Wow. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, what? Give us a bit of a timeline of what happened to your weight after that moment.
So I started rapidly gaining weight. I mean, all of a sudden my legs became tree trunks. I started getting a huge gut on me. I was probably my junior year before September 11th. I probably weighed 179, 180. I was in a weight class in wrestling 179, and so I was right around that area. I graduated high school over 240 pounds. That is a big jump.
That's massive. Well, and
in
what
1 calendar year? Absolutely.
what did it peak at? Like how high did your weight get through the spiral of depression?
When I was 33, many years later, I got all the way up over 650 pounds.
650 pounds, so close to 300 kilograms. Wow. Yeah. Okay. And your height, you were telling me earlier, your height was 5'8.5" or something at that time.
Right around that area, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Now in high school, I was right around that 5'9", 5'10", but the weight just made my spine like a spring and just brought down on me.
So you've lost like a lot of weight now. Do you mind if I ask how much your weight is currently?
Right now, I weigh between 265 and 270.
Okay, so
and I have more skin on my body. I've lost almost 400 pounds.
You've halved your body weight, more than halved your body weight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that is phenomenal.
I have a picture online of me holding these pants up.
Wow.
And it's insane.
So, mate, your posture and everything improved after you were saying that your spine was bent over?
Yeah, absolutely. I know I'm no longer hunched over like this. I mean, I was not confined to a wheelchair all the time, but anytime I went anywhere, I had to be in a wheelchair. I had to be one of those Mart carts. I like at the wall, like here in the States we have Walmart.
Yeah.
I had to be in one of those little electrical carts, and the charge would last for 15 minutes because I had so much weight on it. Broke my ankle just trying to stand up.
Yeah, right. Mate, the like, if you can give us an insight, like at your lowest point, what did a day look like food wise, and then what was the emotional response both before and after?
Oh man, a few times a week, I would go to, here in the States, we have a pizza pie place called Pizza Hut. And I would go to Pizza Hut, always go by myself, and I would order 2 large pizzas. And I tell them, don't cut them up. I would take them home. I would roll them up like a burrito. And I would eat both pizzas. I would feel so bad about that. An hour, 2 hours later, I'd eat a carton to a half-gallon ice cream. Because I felt so good eating it, and then afterwards I felt just terrible about it.
Yeah.
Because that emotional toll of what I just did started weighing on me. And of course I had to get rid of that emotional pain. So I did what I did best. And I went and I ate something else.
Yeah, right.
And I did that 2 to 3 times a week.
Wow.
And I did my best to hide it from everybody. I wasn't hiding anything.
Yeah.
I hid nothing.
Yeah. Did anyone close to you sort of reach out? Like, did they, ever have a?
Oh, I have the best parent. I have my two sisters and I often talk about the fact that we have the model parents. Grew up in a good conservative home. Was in the church every Sunday, and my parents, they didn't harp on me as getting at me like you're a terrible person. They did it in love, but all the time, we love you so much. Listen, this weight is an issue. It's going to take your life one day.
That must have been really hard for them to watch.
My goodness. I don't think I really realized until after my weight loss what it especially did to my mother. And so, and for me, it's very special. I'm adopted. And so knowing that mom and dad, they chose me. They didn't have to take what they got. Knowing that they chose to bring me into their home. They chose to love me. My mother could not have her own natural children. The thought of losing a child because of something like weight or something else had to be so devastating. Just the thought of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got kids of my own, mate. I mean, that, well, I've been thinking if anything had happened to my kids. So to watch that slowly unfold right in front of them for all those years must have been really tough. I mean, tough for you, but as a parent, I can certainly understand that. So, mate, what was the line in the sand, the trigger point where you thought, no, I've got to do something about this?
There were several points in my life that should have been breaking points. That you would have thought that breaking point was when the big and tall store, the local big and tall store, no longer had my size in the store. They had to special order my clothing. I wore over an 80-inch waist.
Wow.
You also would have thought the breaking point, all the stares, all the comments, and then, like I said, I grew up in Florida. I was at Disney one time, waited an hour and a half, almost 2 hours for one ride. Got on there, sat down, did not fit. And they're pushing this bar down, and I made the biggest mistake of looking over. And I saw people with their phones out, taking pictures, and that was so humiliating. You would have thought that was the breaking point. But the real breaking point was I didn't just hit rock bottom. When I hit rock bottom, I dug deeper. And I saw no way out. I was at the doctor's office and said, Doc, excuse me.
Hey, take your time.
I said, I don't know what to do. I said, I have gotten inside this hole. I've dug this one. I can't get out. And my life changed with 6 simple words. He said, you have 6 months to live. And before all of that, I asked God every day. I said, God, if this is all you have for me in this life, if I'm going to be like this the rest of my life, God, bring me home. I don't want to live anymore. And I asked God that every single day. Every day. In fact, I would wake up very upset that I was still alive. I did not want to be alive anymore. But when the doctor put death in front of me, when the doctor said, you have 6 months to live, my mind didn't think 6 months. My mind thought, you are dying. When I was actually faced with real death, I said, okay, God, I don't want to die anymore. I changed my mind. And I fought with every ounce of my being to stay alive. And the doctor said, okay, we need to come up with a plan. And he said, your only chance to survive at this point is bariatric surgery. And he said, I do not know if you're going to wake up from anesthesia from the surgery. He said, if you don't have the surgery, you're going to die. He said, if you do, there's a very big chance you're not going to make it out. And I said, Doc, at this point, I'm okay with dying on the operating table, knowing knowing that at least I'm okay dying trying to do something about it.
Yeah.
Instead of wasting away on the couch, not even being able to use the bathroom by myself.
If a lot of the information in these podcasts are resonating with you, you can learn more by grabbing a copy of The Tweaking Diet. This is available at Amazon and at scood.com.au. Thanks. Wow. So you went ahead, obviously, then with the weight loss surgery, and
I did, yes. So I had what was called gastric sleeve. I wanted the gastric bypass, but he said, your health is we're in crisis mode. I don't think that the bypass is good right now. Let's do the sleeve.
Yeah.
And so you don't put a sleeve on your stomach. They literally cut off all but about that much of your stomach, and they leave about that much. And they pulled the rest of my stomach out. And that slowed down my intake.
Can I just ask a quick question there, Jim? With the sleeve, how, so for those that don't know, Jim just explained it cuts out 3/4 of the stomach, and so it reduces intake, but there's also a neurotransmitter effect that actually helps to control hunger, because food basically hits the small intestine faster, and that then triggers these hormones that go to the brain. So what I wanted to know is,
absolutely,
how does that impact on your emotional eating, though? Because I imagine, there's still a little bit of that lingering, or, you're immediately starting to feel better. Where are you at with that?
There's a hormone we have a hormone called ghrelin. I think that's what it's called. Of course, they took that out. And so that helped with a lot of my physical hunger. I still crave food, though. I mean, because they didn't do any brain surgery on me. I mean, they could help fix this, but they couldn't fix the emotional side. And I think not for everyone, but for a large majority of the overweight population in the world that suffer with weight gain or weight obesity, there's such a huge emotional side to it. Me, I ate because I was depressed, and that was the emotional part of it. And I did not know how to fix that.
Mate, to bore you with a bit of the
until
science,
it was too late.
If I can bore you with a bit of the science just around that for a second, one of our main stress hormones is cortisol, and so it's elevated. It's a real hormonal impact anyway when we're depressed, and so food, particularly rich flavors, they stimulate dopamine, which tends to balance off which tends to balance off our stress hormones. So it's why food is such an effective mood enhancer. So you can really see, with the movement now is really looking at what they call hyperpalatable food. These food companies just hit the sweet spot with sugar and fat combined, and it just releases this big dopamine hit in the brain, and it's addictive. It's like there's debate about whether it's addictive. Sorry, mate.
There have been huge studies, international studies, that sugar is more addictive than crack cocaine. And number one, I agree with that because it's more readily available than crack. Every restaurant, fast food, you name it, they use it.
Yeah, the effect seems to be more potent when combined with fat and salt. So, these food companies just hit the sweet spot of what it takes to elicit this great dopamine response. And so, someone that produces a little bit more cortisol, they're a little bit more susceptible to depression or emotional response. They're really vulnerable by this food that we've got everywhere. And I was going to ask you this question, why do you think we've got a weight problem now compared to, say, 100 years ago? And quite often it's because of our society.
I think that really started in the 80s. So in the 80s, everything started becoming health conscious. Well, these food companies, they were going to tap into that. So they started making fat-free food. Well, fat-free food tastes terrible. It's awful. And so on a label, sugar's not considered fat. And so, I mean, they don't call that anyway. And so when they took the fat out, it made it taste terrible. So what do? They loaded it with sugar and other things that may not be, they are sugar, but they go by different names that they can put on those labels.
That's right. They've
and
got
so a lot of people,
they've got a product to sell, haven't they? They need to enhance the flavor and make you buy more.
Of course they do.
And the other thing is,
I have heard this.
Sorry, mate, you go. We've got a bit of a lag.
I apologize. There's more ketchup in a tablespoon. Excuse me. There's more sugar in a tablespoon of ketchup than there is a donut. A glazed donut.
Yeah.
That's scary.
It is. It really is. Yeah. That's and I think people are slowly coming around to it, but it's still, sure. Knowledge is only the start. The problem is the accessibility, isn't it? Like I think about my grandparents.
Of course it is.
My grandparents' era, they could eat cakes and biscuits and pastries, but they had to bake it themselves. It wasn't something they could just grab when they were fueling up at the petrol station or the gas station, as you might call it. Yeah. So, mate, I always ask this question, like, if you could invent anything to make life easier for your weight loss journey, what would it be?
I had set a time machine to go back with the knowledge that I have now. But because you had asked me that, and I've changed my mind on that. Because if I had gone back in time, so I knew that eye problem was not an issue, and I had gone into the military, I wouldn't have gained all this weight, possibly. I mean, I could not tell the future. But I would have joined the military. I would have probably gone overseas and fought in the Iraq War or in Afghanistan. And as gung-ho as I was about it, because I'm a huge patriot. I love this country. There's a very good chance I would not have come home. But on this side of it, now as a career, I'm an inspirational motivational speaker, what I do for a living now. And of course, I can't say the future for sure, or an alternate future, but I do not believe that I would have reached as many people as I have now. And I'm only a year and a half into my career, but how many people have I touched emotionally now? And so my life, I could have gone overseas, and as far as the weight loss side of things, the weight loss world, it would be meaningless. Now I would have gone over and died for my country, and I would have been 100% okay with that. But my life could have been very different.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So interesting you say that. I asked that question, and is there anything you changed from the past? So many people. And I've heard some horrific stories, some harrowing stories about weight loss and, obesity and things that people have had to deal with. And quite often people say, no, I wouldn't change anything because it's put me on the path to where I am. And so, you've kind of just reiterated that, like even through the turmoil and just the depths of despair and depression that you've been through, like you're still at a point now where you don't think you'd change anything, which is, I think it's quite fascinating. Jim, I always just finish it off with one question about, if there's one bit of advice you could give to someone who is in the same situation as you were 5-10 years ago, what would that advice be?
That goes in line with what I was going to say. Seek people out who are on the other side of it.
Yeah.
There's an old, growing up in the church, there was always an analogy about a guy stuck in a hole. If you're stuck in a hole, you can't get out. And a doctor comes by and writes you a prescription. Here you go. What am I going to do with this piece of paper? I can't get out of here. A plumber walks by and you're like, help me get out of this hole. He throws you a wrench. That'll help you. Pastor walks by and says, here's a piece of the scripture, and okay, that's great. My soul is saved, but that doesn't help me get out of this hole. Somebody comes and jumps into the hole with you, like, you idiot. Now we're both stuck. I know the way out. Going to the doctor is great, and I do not want to downplay medical science, but for people who are having a weight issue, talking to people who have been there, a doctor is a walking encyclopedia. But when you can get it from the horse's mouth and say, I've been there.
Yeah.
Let me help you get through this. There's no other experience besides physical experience, because I've been there.
Lived experience. Yeah. I love that.
Absolutely.
Mate.
Of course it is. Yeah.
Totally. And, people relate to that too, like if you can relate to their situation.
Of course.
And this originally, I created this podcast designed to deliver it to health professionals so they could get more of an insight into that lived experience that they potentially haven't had. So it is great to hear your story. And mate, what's Jim HIIT up to now? So you said that, you've halved your body weight. What's the day look like food wise, exercise wise? It sounds like you're busy with the motivational speaking.
So, of course, at that, prior to my weight loss, I was in a wheelchair a lot, like I said. Now, and that was over 3 years ago. That was 3.5 years ago at this point. Well, August will be 4 years. But last year, for the first time in 20 years, I ran a 5K.
Wow. Mate, that is phenomenal.
And so like I said, I played football in high school, I wrestled, and I ran cross country. And people look at me and there's no way that I ran cross country.
Wow.
And so now my day-to-day life is several times a week, I go out walking, jogging, eating. I choose to eat healthier food. Now, not always. I mean, I had a piece of cake the other day and it was delicious. But I didn't have the whole cake.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've done that.
Yeah.
I've eaten a whole birthday cake by myself.
Yeah.
Now I'm more conscious on the intake of calories I'm taking in and what's in those calories. But this side of it, my daily routine is much different. I wake up earlier. I would sleep till 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, mate, that is fantastic. What a story. I'm inspired by what you've managed to achieve, and it sounds like you've got a second lease on life, and you're giving it.
I lost you there for a minute.
Oh, sorry, buddy. I'm just saying that that was really inspirational. It was a fantastic story. It sounds like you're really kicking goals, and a lot of people will be inspired by hearing just what you've been through and where you've managed to get to in your life. So that's fantastic. Where can people, if they want to learn more, Jim, where can people reach you?
So on several platforms, on Facebook, my Facebook business page is Jim HIIT Motivate. HIIT is spelled HITT, Hotel Igloo Tango Tango. Jim HIIT Motivate. YouTube, the same, Jim HIIT Motivate. And I have a podcast up there of my own I've just started called Find Your Second Wind. You can also email me at jimhitmotivate@gmail.com. And if you are struggling with something like this, reach out to me. Don't just sit there and say, "Oh, I wish I could." No, that's why I started this. That's why I started what I do for a living now, because I want to help other people, because I know where you are, because I've been there, and it sucks. And I don't want people to go through that at all. So do not hesitate to reach out to me.
Fantastic, mate. What I'll do is I'll put all of those links in the show notes as well, so people can just click on them and get in touch with you.
Sure.
Well, Jim, mate, thanks so much for your time today, mate. I appreciate what you've done here, and best of luck for the future.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. I hope you learned something from this podcast. Please subscribe, and if you have your own story to tell, please email us at hello@scoot.co. Thanks.